right, we are live. Hey, Alyssa, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there.
Since the last time.
I know. I feel like a ton has happened. I actually just watched your Friday night fight round 4, I think, with the Penguins. Penguins were victorious. That was pretty hilarious. I meant to ask you about that last time, but I forgot. So give me the scoop. What's the deal with these Friday night fights?
All right, so I've got some patrons on Patreon, and shout out to all of you out there who are a follower of mine and a supporter. I really do appreciate it. We wanted to do something fun with my patrons, and every single month, I mean, I give out maps, I do guides, how-tos, video guides. I give away maps, I give glimpses behind the scenes, the usual stuff, and I give a bucket of it. But I'm like, I want to do something that's just off the wall. And so I'm like, you know what? Ultimate Epic Battle Simulator. Let's plug in my patrons in it, select random units for them, balance the units a little bit, and just slug it out. And we'll just do this knockout competition. And like the winner fights the winners of the other rounds until we have only one. There can only be one. And that person's going to get a $50 Steam certificate.
Whoa.
So it's just a fun thing. I never know who's going to win. I plug in the numbers, I plug in the units, and I hit go. And then I narrate it as it happens, And so I just literally recorded round 5 just before this show.
Oh, really? Wow. Yeah. So round 4 is interesting. So who chooses who gets whose units? Is there a lottery? Do they just pick them? How does that work?
Well, it's a bit of both in a way. So it's a bit of a lottery. We're basically going through the list of my patrons, and we're doing it in order of join date. Okay. So we're just like, here's the first group, here's the next group, and so on and so forth. And then, I've got a small team of guys that help me out with my social media and stuff. One of them will pick out the units. Like, here's our bracket, and we'll populate them with units. So I have no say in that. One guy called Zertan, Zertan. Zertan helps me balance the units. I always then do a double check, but he helps me balance the units, and it's kind of impartial. So I have no say in who does what. But if someone pokes their nose into any of my sort of social feeds and goes, I would love to have something Cthulhu-esque when I get to fight, then I'm going to go off and I'm going to see if there's a unit that will, fit that. And that's what I actually did. I've got a backer called Darren Moira Smith, and he wanted something Cthulhu-like. So I went off and, got something Cthulhu-like for him. So otherwise, it's pretty much.
Were the Penguins a request? Was that a special request from a Penguin lover?
No, so the Penguins were not. The Penguins were a friend of mine in real life. And so it was kind of just, it was almost like a jibe at her over it. I'm just going to give a Penguin, screw it. Well, there was kangaroos in the last one, and kangaroos was a guy who's Australian, and he wanted something Australian, and he specifically wanted like an emu or something, but that doesn't exist. So I'm like, you know what, kangaroo? He gets a kangaroo. So
the fact that they have penguins and kangaroos in that kind of game is hilarious. But yeah, seeing them as you were narrating them, the hundreds of penguins marching across the battlefield was quite the sight to behold. And that they took out I assume by balancing, you mean that basically all the units are essentially equal. They're skinned differently, but ability-wise, they're pretty much the same.
Trying to get them as equal as possible. Not all units are created equal. That some of them have some behind-the-scenes things that we don't control. So like I was going to give my friend like a chest of drawers, for example. A single chest of drawers or whatever, or like 100 chest of drawers. But like they even minimized on all of the stats, it just kept steamrolling through everything else. It's ridiculous. So that's when you got penguins instead. But every unit in this Ultimate Epic Battle Simulator has hit points, attack range, attack speed, damage done, health, block chance. So you can kind of equalize all of those out, and then we pitch them against a control unit until they're winning about 50-50. And then I tend to pitch them against each other one-on-one, just to make sure, this feels about right. And so that's the way we do it.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you guys have a betting pool on who you think is going to come out of this? Whole
Well, we
mess at the
haven't
end.
yet, but you might have bloody just started one. But no, we haven't yet.
I
But,
can't bet
as we
against
get
I
into
can't
the
bet against the Penguins at
quarterfinals
this
and the
point.
semis, who knows what could happen here?
Yeah, it's like March Madness, only it's October. How is your Gaslight London map going?
Oh man, yeah. You see, that's what I was going to do with my green screen. Actually, funny enough,
Oh,
I
you're
was
gonna
going to
put it.
put that
Ah, that's a
behind
good
me.
idea.
Um, I can't do. Can I do a share screen?
I'm not sure. Does it give you the option? I'm not sure if my view is the same as yours. I have some buttons at the bottom, one of which is like share screen, which looks kind of like a little monitor. I don't know
Yeah.
if it'll
Okay.
let
So
you or not. If it will, happy to.
if it will let me do it with your permission, let's see if I can do this. Can I?
Absolutely.
Here you go. Take a look at this.
Oh, hold
So
on. Let me just. Yeah, wait. I can do that.
there you go. That's where I'm at right now with it. Um, so this is
Oh,
fun
cool.
actually. This is sharing a work in progress right here. In fact, I could probably even do a little bit of a zoom in because people actually haven't
Yeah.
seen it this close. So this is how it's going, my friend. This is how it's going.
Is that the Thames there at the bottom? I presume.
This is the Thames right here. I've redrawn this a couple of times. So this is 1890 London. And I was given a few resources, and there's actually resources from the Library of Congress. There's a University of Scotland, of course. There's a University of London. They all have these historic maps. But the thing is, like, this is a hand drawn period, right? So they're all a little bit different, not only because of the year, but just like one guy will draw a road differently on a different angle than everyone else.
Mhm.
So I have to sort of look at the maps and sort of, as I go, sort of figure out what I think is the correct interpretation. But yeah, this is kind of where I'm at. Like some of my favorite bits, honestly. I think this is Regent's Park, I think, right here. And I've got
Okay.
Hyde Park, I think, right
Are
here. So this has
those
been a
train
lot of fun.
lines? Are those some of those really
No,
dark
these are
lines? Are
paths.
those? Oh, okay.
These are paths. These are park paths. Like this sort of, that would be about print size right there. So you can see it's just a softer line.
Yeah. So
These
those
hard
those
lines
so what
right
are
here.
those lines that are coming in? It looks like from the southeast. That's like a really long straight diagonal.
Yeah,
Is
these
that
are
is that
train
train?
tracks.
Okay, okay,
These are train
that's what I was
tracks.
talking about. All right.
And most of the maps of the period do them solid black like this, and I think it's the
Hmm.
right way to go. One
Yeah.
actually did the little tiny train track things on there. I'm not sure that's where I'm going to go with this. I think just nice and simple. I'm trying to copy styles from the period.
Are
This
those
is going to
even
be
visible
colored.
when you zoom out? Because I remember you were telling me one of your tips in our last chat. I think was when I was asking about kind of getting in some of those, getting stuck on some of the finer details, and you made a point of saying, those things don't really become. They just kind of become a muddle once you zoom out. You're trying to do something really careful, zoomed in, but understand that at print size, you're not going to see the individual lines. I imagine
Well,
that might be true with
there's a
the
good
train
example of
tracks.
it.
It'll just be
These are definitely going to show. I mean, these are definitely going to show right here. There's no doubt about this. And I feel like the paths in the parkway are going to show. Things that might not show so much is the detail on the penitentiary here. I mean, you can
oh, that's
see
pretty.
that this is actually taken from one of the reference maps. They had these extra little details, and I'm like, I love this. I'm going to do that. So even if it doesn't show, Chaosium are talking about doing a poster-sized print of this thing, or at least a 4-way fold out. So I'm like, I'm going to put them on there in case they print this thing big, because details like that are going to show.
Yeah, those are
But
really
yeah,
nice.
it's going well, man. I'm having a huge amount of fun with this one. I'm not kidding. It's just I can't stop drawing it. I literally cannot stop drawing it. I find it very, very, very therapeutic.
I believe it. Are all the buildings going to be blacked in eventually, or is there does that represent something when you have a
They
building
actually
that's
do.
fully
That's a
colored?
really good question, and you're the first person to ask it. So,
Yep.
in fact, I should be over here. I'm clicking on the wrong thing. So these are all going to get filled in. Actually, let's talk about this for a moment. These individual ones are going to get filled in but there's some different styles of scene. There's a hatch style that kind of goes this way. There's a hatch style that goes this way. And there's one from the period that actually colors these in almost a pink color with a hatch style on it. And I think that's where I'm going to go with it. I think that will really stand out. And it's not a bright pink. It's kind of like it's almost a watercolor. I'm going to try that out on it. There's another one that just does gray lines. And if the pink doesn't work, I'll do the gray lines. These... Do
any of them separate it out in terms of zoning? I mean, I don't know. Did they even have any zoning? Was it just mixed commercial, residential kind of?
It was kind of mixed. It was kind of mixed. And I can give you some real world examples. These black things right here, these are all churches, cathedrals, public works, hospitals, prisons, workshops, and even blacksmiths. They marked blacksmiths on their maps, which I think is absolutely freaking fascinating. So all of these represent something like that. Like this is a church, for example. We have the Tower of London here. And these are the docks. This is the Millhouse Docks area. I think it's a Millhouse Docks area right here. So all of those were marked on these historical maps. This is, I forget what that is. This is obviously Buckingham Palace. And we have these are barracks. This is a hospital. So all of them are kind of like these key points of interest to someone from 1890, you know? But then what was your question?
Oh, like if they, so obviously it's cool that, so like, I like that they have certain, like those points, like you're saying, points of interest that are black. I was just wondering if there were different shades or the shadings or anything for, so like sometimes you might see a map, maybe a more modern map that might have the commercial district shaded a certain way versus residential versus.
I haven't seen anything like that.
Else.
In fact, what I do see is I see a mixture of like, I think this one is a church down here. In fact, there's one of these which is actually like this is a steamworks, I think, or something like that, gas thing. One of these, I think it's like this, is a blacksmith. So I think it's like mixed in with residential and stuff. They don't color code that way. In fact, they do a lot of black and white, like for the most part. One thing I haven't put on this map yet are terminals and such, because they just mark them in big blobs of black. And I do want to introduce at least a little bit of something different, for things like that. But otherwise, they colored the main roads, they colored the parks, obviously with green, they colored water, and then it was black and white after that. So there was no zoning.
It's high contrast. You can give them that.
Oh yeah, it is. It is. I am definitely going to do some color on this. I want to get the buildings like some kind of color on that. I want to do the terminals a little bit different, and the parks I'm just going to go nuts with. I'm going to have little trees and stuff in the parks.
Oh, is that something they did, or is that just your little Alyssa touch?
I've seen. Well, there's a little bit of both. I wanted an excuse, and I found one map that actually did it. They had little trees on there. I was like, that's it. That's good enough for me. And it was actually a map from 1890. So I'm like, that's good enough for me. I'm going to put some.
It's right in the period.
I'm going to do some little sort of boats and or ships on the Thames and things like that too. Just, why not?
Yeah, you got to jazz it up a little bit. Are they going to add some kind of, are they going to leave it as is, or are they going to put labels? Are they eventually, or are you going to eventually have some road labels and things like that? Or is this meant just to give you, like, are we meant as players to be able to follow streets and things on this, or is it more like just to give the kind of atmosphere of, here's Gaslight London kind of thing?
Well, so the deliverable for this one is to put labels on it for something like 30 POIs that they listed out. So there's definitely POIs I'm going to have to mark on this. So for example, they have Westminster, or not Westminster, the house's apartment right here. This is one of their POIs. So I'm going to have to put a label of some description on this, probably, but it's going to be a key. It's going to be a number and a key. And I'm going to put the key down in the bottom corner over here. I'm going to probably have like the big title and everything, because there's no POIs that they want to have marked. So I'm going to do a key here. And they typically didn't do that, but that's okay, because we'll make it look stylistically, right. And then we'll have some circled numbers across the map. They haven't asked for this. I'm thinking about putting some road names on here, though, because they did it in the period. I've got some examples where every single road is labeled, every one. And between you and me, I'm tempted to do it. I'm tempted to.
Oh my
I
gosh.
really, really, really am. I mean, honestly,
how
a
about just
print
some main
size.
roads? Some main roads I think could be really good. I mean, look, if you were able to name all the roads, it would be amazing from an immersion where, I don't know, whatever they call the referees in Call of Cthulhu could really just go and give you almost turn by turn going down the streets, which would be stupendous. But
you
I
wouldn't see
mean,
most of
that's
them.
an
I
ask.
mean, we zoom in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this road, yes, of course, we'll see the label on this. But then when you start getting into these or these, you're just not going to see them, right? And yet I have resources that have labels on every single one of these. And I think to a degree, it's part of then the look and feel and the ambience of the map, even zoomed out. You're going
It
to
almost
see
gives a
these.
texture to the street
Exactly.
with.
Exactly. It becomes a texture. But it would never, I don't think you'd ever see it in print unless you printed it out freaking like this, But I'm really, really tempted to
Oh
do it.
man, I mean, I'm just looking at all those roads. I feel like that is Call of Cthulhu right there. The insanity at the bottom of the well of trying to label all those streets. You feel the chaos coming to grab you. How do you know how big? I mean, how big those original maps were? Because presumably at the time, right, that map from say 1890 that has all the streets printed on there. They didn't. I mean, they must have been something that was. I mean, do we know what the size of it was? Was this something that was, one of those? I don't know. I think of in movies or something where they'll unfurl some just massive map that takes over a whole, conference table and people squinting at it through, monocles and things, looking at it. Because I mean, we're looking at it, printing it out in kind of 8.5 by 11. I can't imagine either had them writing it in if it was really that tiny, or kind of like you're saying, what's the usability at that point if you need a magnifying glass to even see it?
Because I've got these things, so let's say for the sake of argument that I grabbed a map from the University of Scotland. They're actually a really good resource. They have some incredible stuff there. And but they're digital at this point, even if they're scanned in. So I don't know. I just know the size that they've got the scan at. While on the flip side, London University, honestly, they've got these maps, and even if you download them at the highest resolution, they're just about this big. They're way too small. And they're clearly not representative of the original. And the originals don't give any clue, like at all. They don't say 1 inch per mile or anything like that. But they got to be big. I mean, these things.
I got to imagine. I mean, someone's doing it by hand. I mean, at the sizes they're going, even if it was a huge map, I can't imagine that they were doing anything. But by having to sit there and squint at it or put on their best eyeglasses and just carefully write out whatever the street name. It's not like they can just whip out the type tool or type on a curve tool in Photoshop and just zoom the font way down. I mean, they're doing that all by eye. I mean, it's crazy, but I mean, it looks beautiful. I'm just trying to imagine what it'll look like with all this stuff, or a lot of this stuff kind of filled in and colorized, if you will. It's going to be
this
something
right
to
here
see.
will give you a sense. I don't know if that changed for you, because I'm just sharing a screen. It did. Perfect. So this is actually one of the resources, and you can see I can zoom in pretty close on this.
Holy cow. Yeah.
And you can see what I'm talking about, like Hermitage Dock, Steam Packet Wharf, Iron Gate Station. But they labeled everything, and you can't even read these things. Gainsford Street, Cross Lane, maybe Gross Lane, maybe. Now this map is actually of a slightly earlier period. You can see, because actually Outer London here and over here.
Oh yeah.
It is
Right.
actually thinner. There's nothing in this area. Notice the rail, by the way, that matches what I've drawn. But you'll notice there's no buildings. And it was kind of crazy. I've learned so much on this particular project, like of London, not only like where things are located, but you go from like 1850, 1860 to 1890, and all of this stuff fills in. There's buildings all over. This
Yeah, I
is
want to say
explosive growth.
I want to say I listened to a podcast. It was kind of around Jack the Ripper sort of stuff, but I think it was Regent's Park. They talked about was actually kind of sort of lower middle class housing that they basically pulled down to create Regent's Park, and how that displaced a lot of people and caused a lot of issues, but it made this kind of beautiful park on top of it that you wouldn't know if you were just walked around and see it, kind of what was there, beforehand. But it was a creation of this sort of Victorian period. I think it was Regent's Park. It might have been a different one, but that was just in and of itself was pretty fascinating.
There's Regent's
But yeah,
Park.
it's pretty
Right?
crazy how those
Yeah.
how much details they squeeze in there.
Oh yeah, in between maps. Like this is actually slightly off view, but there's a whole new park that just crops up here. Like I've got a map from like 1840, 1850. There's no park here. And then 1890, there's a big, huge freaking park right here. And I'm like, but what about the stuff that was there beforehand? And just to your point, they probably just bulldozed it down and just built something new.
Yep.
But you can actually see though on this one, some like you see how this is almost like a hatch fill on
Right.
this.
Right.
It's not quite solid
Oh,
black, and you can see
there's your
these
building
lines.
too. That was that the one that's got the yeah. I was just looking in the corner. What was you called? The Hermitage or whatever. The one with the
Oh
sort
yeah,
of star
this is the penitentiary. Yeah,
penitentiary. Yeah.
Millbank Penitentiary. And a fun thing is, because I was looking at this, I was like, Millbank Penitentiary? Is that even on modern maps nowadays? Well, it's not, because ultimately this did get knocked down. By the way, this is where I got this design from. It was from this particular map. But this is a ditch here. This exists today, and they've just built houses around it on at the side. But this actually still exists, that ditch, which I think is
Wow,
fascinating.
that is fascinating. Is it filled? What does it look like? If you looked at
No,
it out of
it's like a
curiosity.
concrete slope down. It's like
Oh,
going to a
okay.
star fort or something nowadays, you know? So you've got this sign of these old battlements, so to speak, that are
Yeah.
still there. But the actual penitentiary is long gone.
Long gone now. People are just got their condos up where it used to be a prison.
Exactly. But you see how they're very just sort of black and white on this
Yeah.
thing? They've got the main roads marked in. I'm going to do this main roads in
Are you
yellow
going to
thing. I
do the
kind of
kind
like
of
that.
yellow, that sort of
Yeah.
yellow color?
Yeah. Exactly. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do a lighter green than this. I'm going to do more watercolor. But you can see they've actually got some trees and the likes on this.
Oh yeah, look at some kind of like little kind of grass things and trees. That's
Little
cool.
grass
They got the
texture.
paths in there.
So this is what I'm going to do. Hey, Liquid. This, I mean, look at this. They've got all of these little trees in the grass. I am going to absolutely do something like this.
Yeah,
To
those are
this
really
day,
nice.
though, I don't actually know what this is. All of the maps have this type of thing. It's this dash dotted line. But not all
I was going to
streets
say it
have it.
reminds me of a two-way street, but we're presuming that's not what they mean.
Yeah,
Since
I
there are
don't know.
probably other streets that are two-way that don't have.
And in some places, like, I mean, look, it might be a tram, actually, thinking about it. I wonder if it's a tram line.
Did they have some
But
kind of
then
cable car
it
in
does
London at
this,
the time?
and it just goes right through a building. I'm like, you know, so I started forming this theory for this line, and I'm like, so is this a sewer? Is this
Oh,
like a
that's a good
tram line?
idea.
But then it kind of just goes off at an angle. I'm like, okay, so now I don't know what it is anymore.
Man, it's like they should work that into the game. That should be one of the adventures. It's the mystery of when you find a map with these weird lines, and it's totally fits in with Cthulhu type stuff, right? The connecting a basement here and it's crossing over to something here, and it's where the ghouls are down there. What's going on down in those, whatever it is those dashed lines represent. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
It is. I've loved this project. Has been great, just from the point of view of looking at the evolution of London, and honestly, just the different styles of maps. The fact that this one has all of these, I don't know if it's latitude and longitude, but I don't think it is, but it's got to be. I mean, I don't know what it is. It's some kind of marker,
It must be
almost
just so that
grid.
they can just kind of like in a hex map or something where you want they might want to be able to look at and say we need something in 23, 29 and just be able to go to the grid really fast, just like
It's
we
got to
might do
be
on
right.
our fantasy maps. Yeah,
I'm tempted to do something like this on the map because again it's period and this type of border right here. One thing I love about this one, by the way, look at this. It's like they just cobbled something on the corner here.
yeah.
It's like no other map does this. It's like, oh, we actually need extra. And so, well, I didn't do the map that big. Well, figure out a way, my friend. Okay, well, I guess I'm going to
Break the
paste something
borders, paste
on.
this other piece of paper on top with the rest of the map.
Yeah. No other map does this. It's just, okay, I'll just stick this on the side here.
Yeah, that's really funny. That's one of those kind of fun touches. Did they say anything about the history of the map or the map maker or anything else that's interesting, or
So,
they just present you the maps?
no, well, so I was given some maps. Some maps were too early. Like one of the best maps is actually from like 1830, and it's way too early. I can actually probably show you that one, but I can't use it because there's just so much has changed. So I actually went off, and I'm using my resources. The Library of Congress, the U.S. Library of Congress, was one of the best ones, and
Yeah, they have a
the
lot of nice
Scottish
stuff. Really
University
high
is the
res
best.
too.
Oh yeah, amazing resolution. I love the US Library of Congress. I was very disappointed by London University. Really disappointed. In fact, so here's another one. The Whitbread's New Plan of London, drawn from authentic surveys. This one's pretty good too. You've been using this one a lot. I love the color palette of this one, by the way. I can see me doing this one quite a bit. Like I love the greens on this. I love the
That
soft
is, I was gonna
blue.
say, nice green. Yeah, I like the blue on the edges of the river.
I
That's
could see
nice.
me picking up from this pretty heavily, but notice how thin the map is here and here and here. It's like London hasn't quite in this period grown. So there's only so much I can do with this particular map. Plus,
Yeah,
this was one map where this here is the Tower of London. I mean, look, it looks like it's a ruin.
yeah,
I
it
don't even know
does.
what they've drawn here. I found myself actually looking at the history of the Tower of London to see if it was a ruin in 1830. It wasn't. So I don't know what this particular
Huh.
artist drew, but it's like that's not the Tower of London. And then they did something really funky over here with the Houses of Parliament, right here, like this weird shape. Now, the Houses of Parliament has changed shape. It used to be individual buildings, and then they did eventually rebuild. There was a massive fire, and they rebuilt like this. And then, obviously, in World War One, it was actually heavily bombed. No, World War Two, it was heavily bombed. But it never had this shape, like ever. So, whoever drew this map, they were on crack or something. I don't know. So this is the type of thing
Yeah,
I'm
that is
talking about,
odd.
where they would just do, and look at the penitentiary too. It's like very abstract in shape. It's like a snowflake.
It's almost it's such a kind of a pretty shape for a prison. I mean, you can see the utility as far as a prison goes for that shape, but it is kind of like, wow, that's a very kind of pretty. You might not think if you just took away penitentiary and just left that on a map that someone would think that was a prison. They might think, oh, it must be a temple or church of some kind. No, that's a prison.
Exactly. No,
That's a jail.
100%. 100%. So here's one from the University of London. Look how small that is. This is their max size. And it's like,
Jeez.
I can't use this.
Yeah, it's just a
This was the
mess.
max size they had available online. Very disappointing.
They got to get their digitizers. We got to get a new
Yeah.
team or pay them some money.
And it's a real shame too, because they
Going.
had a whole bunch. I mean, look, they had all of these maps of London, and look how small they all are. Like every single one. I was so disappointed when I grabbed them. Then we actually get back into something that I think is on the Scottish University, where suddenly now we're getting back into business. And by the way, this
They've
is
got
one
that
of those
nice
maps.
shading on the Thames too. I like that. That kind of the
Beautiful shading on the
darker
Thames.
blue that sort of fades in the middle.
Nice hatch on the buildings. They've got the main the roads again marked, which I really, really like that style. And every single street
Every single
is
street.
named.
Yeah.
Everyone. It's
What was
just
that little bit
crazy.
of pink I saw? Is that outlining a district or I don't know what a neighborhood?
Oh, I
Like
don't
over there
know.
on your yeah,
Oh,
there's
here.
like this pink.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that might be like the square mile or something. That
And
might
that's where
be.
Cthulhu landed,
Oh,
that
actually, no,
splotch.
that might be
That's
a particular district. Yeah, I see that.
kind of cool. Yeah, these are all beautiful maps.
Right.
How long do you think from where you are now until you get to sort of this stage? How much work are you looking at still?
I'm about. What did I say in my last post? I'm about 40 hours in. Is that what I calculate? Yeah, I'm about 40 hours in. I probably have another. I probably have another 20 hours of ink work. I'm gonna guess. And then I'm probably looking at about another 20 to 40. So I'm about 60 hours out. It's probably going to be a 100-hour map. I'm thinking something
So you're
like
like
that.
about a third of the way, somewhere in there. What are all these things at the
Yeah,
bottom? Are those additional labels? All that text that's on the
these are
edge?
labels,
That's kind of a cool way to do it too.
isn't it? I don't know how it's meant to work though. I mean, I'd love the look quite a bit.
Well, let's see. What is it? So one of those, let's just take one. It says, I don't know, was that Gray's Inn? Is that what that says? Or Gray's Iron? I can't tell. I don't have my glasses on. It says M. Do they also have some kind of grid thing here for
Oh,
being able to
Gray's
suss
Inn
out where
Lane
M is?
M. Yeah, like how does that
So
relate?
where's M?
Oh, they do have. Oh, they have these. See, they have these big letters on the grid.
Yeah.
So this is an
So they
interesting
kind
grid.
of
There's
have
no
it.
X
So
and
they have it. So they
Y.
have their own kind of. Yeah, they don't have them off map, but they just kind of plunk a
So
letter
everything
somewhere.
in the M. So there's R. There's M. So Gray, that whatever Gray Street or whatever it was, is apparently
Gray's
in
Link or
this
something
grid
in
somewhere.
that. I
That's
kind
an
of. I mean, I
interesting one.
like having the labels on the bottom like that, but I think having the letters over the top of the map not the best.
No, I don't think I could do this. I'm even wondering about doing this grid. I think I am going to because all of the maps of the period had a grid. So I think I'm going to do this, but I'm going to make it softer. But I don't want to do this. It becomes very distracting, even hard to read, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Like R, they're able to kind of put it over the tab so at least you can read it. But some of those others, it seems like it does kind of just muddy up the things. But I think having some kind of grid is nice. Both just as you've said, it was something that did appear in the maps in period, and it does have a kind of a usability thing. If at a table they want to use it to be able to say, well, at least giving you an idea of where you are on the map. I think it's nice to be able to go like, oh, go to 51, 52. And I could look at that as a referee and say, okay, we're kind of near the river. So that can give me some ideas of sights and sounds and smells and, and all that kind of jazz. But yeah, that
It's
overlaying the
crazy how
letters
they've
on
done
top of the,
all of this. That is nuts.
wonder how long it took them to do it. That's a lot of,
Right? Right? No,
a lot of work.
totally. Because these guys are hand drawing it and they're doing pencil on a big piece of paper. And it's funny because, like, I think it was this map here. I kind of like this map, by the way, quite a bit. I've used this a lot in my reference because it's super clear. I love how crisp it is. I'm definitely going to take something like this as my style for the title and everything.
Yeah.
And then, but imagine I'm going to do the key underneath
Oh yeah, I
it.
like that. I like that key. And they
So
and they do give you the measurements there, half mile squares. Okay.
I love how they've got these little labels appear on the map too, here and there. And they've got the little church and chapels and things like that. And they've even got the tramway and the omnibus routes. So I love this. I really do. This is a wonderful one. I kind of like the coloring on it. It's a little washed out, but it's a great resource. And it's another one where every single freaking road is named. But I think it was this one where they just get to a point, I think it was this one, and they just stopped drawing at one stage. Maybe it wasn't this. And
You
seriously, they
imagine
just
the
got to a
map
stage
maker
where they were
just
like,
threw
"Yeah,
down
I'm
his
done."
pencil and just walked away. Just I'm out of here. I'm done.
He's like, yeah, he was like, he
Can't
was just totally
anymore.
done. And then we just got these little tiny. This one, by the way, and again, this is another small one. It's kind of interesting how they've got the border design. They've actually got the buildings drawn in. But I'm not going to do this because look how much map just gets sucked up with it.
Yeah, that takes up a lot. I mean, it's kind of cool in its own way, but yeah, that's a lot of space. So that one seemed to indicate that the dash lines were a tramway, but that still leaves the question of when the tramway seems to just plow through a building.
Yeah,
What
what's
was
going
going
on with
on?
that?
What was going
Oh,
on
this
there?
is the one. This is the one. So I got heavily inspired by this in a lot of areas. I love how they've drawn individual little tiny houses over here. My map has this, but this is the one where it's like he's just stopped. I mean, there's definitely things out here, but they just haven't like I've got a road
Ran out of budget. You know, the
and
poor
it's
guy
like, hey,
died on
okay,
the
this map
job.
is due. Come on. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess I'm done. And it's just stopped on all of it. So this map has been great. It's been a good resource. This one is actually a little bit too early in period, but I had to stop using it as well because it just would just like peter out. It's like, yeah, I've had enough. I'm not doing. Here's another one. It's like, yeah, there's probably things in here somewhere, but they'll figure it out in the
Yeah,
future.
the locals chased him out with sticks and throwing ale cups, pint glasses at their heads. There was a
Hey,
funny,
maybe.
funny. Some
You know, one of the
I was
fascinating
reading
things
something
about this,
about
though,
yeah. Go.
well, it's just a different way that they've done the grids. Every single guy
Oh,
has had this different way of doing it. You know, this is like another method again going on here. You know, and I
oh,
think
I
these are
see.
mile
Yeah.
markers. I think there's exactly 1 mile here, but
Oh,
it's also
all
numbered
right.
them, which I think is kind of cool.
That is kind of cool. I'm not sure which one of those I like better. That one's kind of neat. The other one, I will say, with all the numbers, is maybe the most from a usability standpoint, but they were awfully busy. This is a lot more kind of subtle,
Right,
sort of
right.
takes the edge off. I remember reading a book. I don't remember if I ever got through it or not, but apparently there was some story about a guy surveying, going around France. It might have been the 19th century sometime, surveying, and he was actually killed by a local village because they didn't understand what he was there to do. And they just saw, here's this strange man going up to a high place with like surveyor's tools, and they literally killed him. So like
That's
the idea
hilarious.
of this is the guy going into some area of town and people just looking at him funny where he's got all his little bits and he's like, all right, I'm out of here. Never mind. We'll just leave that off the map. Here there be monsters, and I'll go back to where it's brighter, and and I'll just do that.
That is actually hilarious.
How's your own game going? I think you're running you're full steam ahead with Cthulhu. I can't remember if last time you had started or you were getting ready to start the next chapter of your Cthulhu game.
Yeah, so what we spoke at last month. So they definitely were in Egypt at the time. They've done a couple of sessions now, a few sessions in Egypt. They've definitely got. I don't want to do any spoilers on the channel, but they've definitely sort of unearthed some of the major milestones that the Cairo chapter has going on. So yeah,
Any
I mean
madness?
it's good. What's that?
Any madness? Anybody been driven insane by the
Actually,
dark secrets they've
yes,
discovered? Oh,
yes. We have had someone, and there's different types of madness in Call of Cthulhu. There can be the whole permanent madness, reaching zero sanity, that type of thing. But this was more of he lost too much sanity in one go, and then also had insight into it, which made it even worse. But yeah, we've definitely had someone like that. We've definitely
so
got
what does
some
that look like? Do
18
you
of
do you do you
sanity.
pick up a quirk? Do you pick up a delusion? How does that insanity kind of look like in Call of Cthulhu?
So it can vary, right? So in this particular instance, one of the investigators was reading a book, that type of book,
Mm.
and he finished it. He finished it while in Cairo, which immediately had a sanity hit, which he rolled badly on, which gave like a temporary sort of madness. Now, in this sort of period, like if all the PCs are around, then it might manifest one way, but no one was. So basically, the GM takes over. So this is a guy who would earlier bonded with an artifact. Also, you don't do that type of thing in Call of Cthulhu. And he has Nyarlathotep himself talking to him in his head, which is also not good. So in the whole Egyptian chapter, part of it is Nyarlathotep wants you to go to the bent pyramid. I won't say why. So this particular PC woke up the following morning, walking across the hot sands in his bare feet and his nightgown towards the bent pyramid. Which then some things happened after that, which gave him further sanity loss. So it just ended up being this compounding problem. So now he's seeing a shrink at this point in time to try and put things back. But
were the rest of the party able to interfere and stop him from getting to the bent pyramid? I'm presuming that
they
arriving at the bent pyramid.
They weren't at night. If they had him in there, then yeah, things might have played out a little bit differently. But he was in his hotel room on his own, just reading his book until the following morning, and he's not there anymore. He actually picked. I have this deck of cards which Chaosium came out with, which have a whole bunch of insanity things in there, like little quirks and phobias and things like that. And I just pull one of those out randomly. It's basically a card version of that random table they have in the book. And he had a fear of time.
Ooh, that's an interesting one.
I forget what the actual name is, like chronophobia or something like that, which I felt was really appropriate because this is a world-spanning thing where you're chasing down something, you're not quite sure what, across different continents, and it is ticking down to something. And up until a certain point, the players don't know what it's ticking down to. They just know something's happening, and there is a date of some description. So I figured it would be appropriate for him to have this fear of the passage of time now. So that's what he's wrestling with.
Nice. Is that actually useful? Because now they have a real kind of ticking clock, that can kind of remind them that the time is that, whatever time they have left, that it's passing.
It could be. It could be. Yeah, I mean, it could work out to their advantage, if not just as a little reminder to them that, come on, you don't know what the timeline is, but you know it's ticking. So, and I think it's just a nice, fun thing to then play around with,
Oh yeah, for sure. How did they? Because one of the things that's interesting, right, is back in the day, everyone would just throw around whatever kind of pseudo psychological quirks and things with kind of wild abandon. No one really, looking at what the real realities of different things are. I think of things like schizophrenia, where it just become kind of a joke of like, oh, you just got multiple personalities or anything, things like that. That now I think we look at differently and say, okay, we probably shouldn't make fun of, we probably should do things differently because it's a real thing. It's not a joke. It doesn't work like movies have taught us to. Do they, at least I guess the more recent Cthulhu rules, do they address that at all, or do they word things differently, do anything differently, or do they just kind of just go with sort of the more, I don't want to say like Hollywood stereotypical kind of feel for some of these issues that prop up? Like your insanity cards.
That's a really good question. And I certainly don't want to talk for Chaosium at all. But one of the things that I've actually really enjoyed about this whole 7th edition that they've got is they outright will say at the beginning of a scenario, beginning of a rule book, that these may deal with some sensitive subjects, and they give guidance for how to handle it, including outright, just if you're not comfortable with this, if the group is not comfortable, then don't do this. Just don't do it, And so let's just say they're sensitive. They're sensitive to the various topics that it touches on. At the end of the day, this is a horror game at its core, regardless of the time period that you're in. But if we pick the default 1920s, this is a period that's full of racism. So it encourages you outright to you don't have to then bring that to the table. You don't have to be still full on with this. And it's likewise with anything else. So they'll say, look, the keeper has full control. This, by the way, is one of the systems that I love the most, because they absolutely just say, look, don't worry about the rules. Keeper, you've got control. This is our guideline. And they do it on everything. Casting spells, books, you name it. They'll say, look, we suggest this, but at the end of the day, just do whatever you want, and it's okay. So, and for the sensitivity, it's the same sort of thing. For my own part, I'm not gonna sit there and bring anything to the table that's gonna make any players feel uncomfortable. But something like, honestly, schizophrenia, I would probably roll with that, but I would roll with that with me taking over one of the other characters as or one of the other personalities as a keeper, or multiple personalities as a keeper. Because at the end of the day, you want to screw over your players. You want the players to, that feel like they're
Sure.
not fully in control. And the more that they slide into insanity, the more you want them to feel that. So I think there's certain
Absolutely.
things that you could totally take it with taste, and with caution, but still have as a wicked elder being keeper, still have a lot of fun there.
Oh yeah, totally. I'm with you on kind of the racism things. I actually really appreciated like seeing the newer like Shakespeare renditions and things like that. Well, they will have characters of all different ethnicities playing different parts, and it's essentially colorblind. And I've seen some people get upset with that, but I don't know like why. Like, one, I want to see just the best actors playing, regardless of whether they're male, female, or they happen to be black or white or Asian or whatever. Like, no, I just want to see the best actors playing it. And it's kind of cool to imagine that it was a better world than it really was, right? In a sense, we're saying that if the Queen of England could be black and the king could be Hispanic and all these things, and nobody cares, like, boy, wasn't that kind of a better, isn't that almost the kind of world we would like to live in, as opposed to it, no, you've got to be, white and inbred through 8 generations to be on the throne. It's like, no, we can leave that behind. Let us have our fantasy for a couple of hours of, hey, everybody's getting along on that level. Because especially something like Call of Cthulhu, there's enough other stuff happening. We have elder gods from behind the moon that are coming to do mischief. We could put the little petty racist stuff aside and just kind of have fun and pretend, which is what these games
Right.
are all
And
about.
honestly, and you raise a really good point, and I agree with you 100%. When you're historically, let's say, if you're more playing something in a historical period or a historical place, I think it can still be handled differently than turning into some kind of racist asshole as a GM. I don't have to play a racist any more than a player does, and honestly, players that do this whole, yeah, but it's my character, whether it's to do with racism or not, you're just being a disruptive git, stop it. And as a GM, I think it's easy for me to sort of be able to sort of, you've got some kind of scene, you've got some interaction going on. And if one of the players is playing an African American, and I do have a player playing an African American, I can say, you know what, this guy's a bit of a racist asshole. And that's it, without me actually saying what this guy is saying.
Right.
I don't have to put myself in this guy's shoes. I could just tell the player, yeah, he's a bit of a racist kid. You can tell just by the things he's saying. And that's it. That's just, you don't have to
Yeah,
go deeper
totally.
than that.
No, I don't know. I mean, it's funny because you mentioned GMs and players, because players will also build these incredibly racist, they'll get on these single tracks. Well, an elf killed my brother, so now I hate all elves and they all have to die. And it's kind of like, why do you gotta do that? Can't you find a little nuance? Like, it's like, just you don't need to close yourself off an entire species because one of them broke bad in your backstory. Just give elfdom or dwarves or drow or whatever, or whoever it is, a break. Just because a goblin robbed you once doesn't mean that you have to wish death upon all goblins everywhere. And there's Pex with dwarfs are raisin eaters. They might be. Yeah. Terrence, an elf killed my brother once. Oh, he's going with the Johnny Dangerously quote.
But no, but you're
Nice.
right in that, actually. And this is one thing where I've been GMing and I've been role playing for a long time now, like since the mid 80s. And I've hit so many problems and errors and group errors. And I think the whole point is to be able to grow and learn from it. And one thing that we learned is, look, it's okay to build the character and the personality that you want, but recognize if it's going to be disruptive to the party or the players or the characters or the campaign as a whole. So if you are going to play that guy of, an elf killed my brother once, so now I hate all elves, that's cool. And thank you for shaping out your character. Really appreciate it. But if you're going to dial this thing up to 11, it's going to be disruptive to the game.
Yeah, and that's
Throttle
where
it
they
back.
will generally pull out well, that's what my character would do. It's usually the answer to the question, why are you disrupting everything? Well, that's what my character would do. And I actually went on a rant about this on another stream. But my thing about it is you control the character. The character is not pulling the strings for you. You have your character do something, and you create the justification for your character's reasons. So if your character hates all elves, and then an elf joins a party, you figure out how to make that work, and you decide how your character allows that to fly, as opposed to, nope, I'm not going to let it happen because that's what that's what my character would do. But somehow that becomes twisted, but it's not a new
Lazy, man.
thing.
It's lazy. It's
It's
like these stereotypical thieves that I'm just going to rob from the party. And it's like,
on day
yeah,
one you just
but
joined
the other
and you're
players
already
know you're doing
joining.
it. It's now going to be
Yeah,
disruptive. And we have a phrase actually that is out of character. And it's basically a timeout. And it's like, okay, look, but out of character, it's going to disrupt the game. You're going to start to foster this animosity with the other characters. It's what my character would do, but you're going to derail the game. Throttle it back a little bit, And I think if players could start to recognize that, it can help. You could still, like, if you want to be playing a thief that's rob some stuff, okay, cool. But just don't be full out on it and like taking the 3,000 GP gem off the party, and the players know you're doing it. People
yeah.
are just going to resent you.
It's silly. I think the piece of advice I gave before is you have to. I think look at it like each session's like like a sitcom or your favorite TV show, something like, say, Firefly. Lots of folks love Firefly. It was a fun show. Jane on Firefly was always this kind of jerky. I don't know if you've seen Firefly. He's a jerk. He's kind of curmudgeon. He would sort of be contrarian. Every show, he'll do something kind of once where Mal or somebody's trying to get something done, and Jane's got to kind of throw down some snark or kind of, kick his heels or do something else. And they'll have that kind of moment, and then the moment will pass and it's over. And I say to people, so have that one moment where you can do it in a way, like you're saying, it's not disruptive. It can be that kind of moment, or like go back to the A-Team. They got to get Mr. T on the plane. And so every time they got to figure out a way to drug him. Okay, so that, and then after that, it's not an issue again.
It's done.
Have that moment and it's done. But when you're doing it in everything, I'm going to steal the gem here. I'm going to do the thing here. I'm going to do the thing here. And it's just like every moment, it's like, okay, like you're saying, dial it back. Pick your one scene, pick that one thing where it's going to be funny and it's not going to be just super annoying. Throw it out there. They catch you. They slap you on the wrist. Thief, don't steal. Okay, boss. And then that's it. Or you have a little giggle and you're done. But, folks have a hard time of having that self kind of reign. I mean, it's good to have some kind of timeout. We used to have kind of because someone in our game used to smoke, we'd call smoke breaks even if no one wanted to smoke, just to kind of clear the air or get a couple of players like, okay, if you're going to go down this path, that we're going to have not going to have a very productive game session, or you can figure out a way not to do that, and we can actually try to accomplish things that ultimately we all want to accomplish. Oh boy, Pex put something long on here. Let me see this. Pex says, for my thieves, play the long game. You're going to steal from the party. Wait until they have something worth stealing and then run like hell. The party will chase you until the end of the earth, but it's worth it. Yes. I mean, that's the other thing. If you're going to be some kind of evil, then yeah, be like, what's his name on the new or the newer Battlestar Galactica? What was his name? Baltar or something, where you're trying to play like the long con, the long game. Be the guy that turns on the party at the big bad evil guy. Don't be the guy that turns on the party as they're just step foot in the dungeon and you're, hi, I'm turning against you. It's like, yeah, it doesn't really mean much. Save it for the end. Make it something that's going to be memorable. But players are going to play. I think one thing that's kind of, I have to keep in mind, and I'm not sure if this comes up to you, but especially when I'm reading stuff on the internet, a lot of the really goofy stuff I got out of my system in the early 80s when I was a kid, 8, 9, 10. I'm playing the game, all the kind of ridiculous stuff. I wonder, a little bit of me thinks that even if you're picking the game up and you just got in the game over the last few years, whether you're that age or you're 20 or 30 or 40, 50, beyond, there's part of you that kind of has to get that sort of really goofy stuff out of your system. So I try to keep in mind that, however old you are, you're new to the hobby. And maybe there's things that you just kind of got to work through. You got to play that one character who's going to just do annoying stuff, because I did it when I was 8 and I don't even remember it anymore, but it kind of was like I have that sort of DNA memory of, I already been there, done that. And maybe some folks just got to have that kind of one throwaway one shot where they're like, you know what? Here's the town, kill everybody, get all your impulses and just run them through. Feel better. Okay, now let's go play like the real game. But maybe that's just me.
I think that's fair. That's a fair observation. But I don't think it ever really truly stops. And I mean that from the perspective of, I once played a character in recent memory, like about 10 years ago, that was a goblin. I wanted to play a goblin kind of shaman type. And he was great and he was fun and he was funny, but he didn't contribute to the party's success. He didn't work against it. He was the comedic factor. The problem is he didn't contribute towards the party's success. And, and we had another character who was actually Jack, my husband. He was doing another character who was a little bit similar. He wasn't the comedy, but ended up with being two of us not really contributing. And so I think from my perspective, even though this is like 30 years into my role-playing history, I was able to sort of sit back and go, this isn't actually working. I love the character. I love his personality. I love his quirks. But I recognize that I'm not furthering the success of the group here. And so I need to make a change. So I think I would argue that one should always have some awareness of how much you are contributing, because it's not just about your character, right? It's like, how much are we contributing to the success of the group, the party, the other players, their enjoyment, here, and even into the long game. And I think I personally am always asking that question to myself. And, if I start wondering away from that, it's time for me to sort of pull myself back.
I mean, I think it's great, and I think it's part of I think you'd like to think is kind of as you mature as a player, and obviously you GM as well, so I think having that awareness too of seeing it from the other side of the screen and kind of looking at, is great. And you're probably right that maybe some players don't ever kind of grow into that. They don't see it. I think being a GM does really help a lot with that, because once you start having to sort of herd the cats from that end of it, then you'll really start to see stuff that you might have thought was just fun or funny or cute, or isn't anyone having a good time? And when you get on the other side and you're trying to manage now 5 players all on a journey that they all enjoy, and you have one player that's just deciding for giggles to just be disruptive or just do whatever, and like you're saying, not really help move things forward, then you can really see how that becomes a detriment. And then you get back on the player's side, you may be more aware of like, I'm becoming that guy that was driving me nuts in the other game because he would just want to do his own thing every time the party turned around. I'm starting to want to do my own thing every time the party turned around. Let me figure out how I can balance, if that's something that's part of my character, like Pax, as folks mentioned, like a Dr. Smith from Lost in Space. I want to be a little bit like that, but I got to figure out how I can do that while not making the game all about me, or always splitting the part, or doing whatever kind of things that we look at and say, yeah, we don't really want to do this a lot in our games. And as Pex points out,
it's like your Jane analogy that you said, and I think that's a good one, because it's like, look, it's okay to have your little moment, but then back into the game, right?
Have the moment, move it on.
Exactly. And if I'd actually applied that to my goblin, he'd probably still be running around. I'd still be playing him, but I didn't. And I'm talking 30 years of role-playing game. I just want to do something different because I've played everything at this point. I'm going to play a goblin, but don't worry, because he's going to be a good guy. But he was always full on Jane. He wasn't an arsehole, but he didn't contribute. There's a raging fight going on, and he's off collecting battlefield loot or gadgets or picking up daisies or something. It's like, yeah, but we got a fight happening now. Contribute, Faden. Let's do this thing. It's like, if you do it once, everyone gets a chuckle, but not all game. And so I felt foul of that.
Yeah, it's a good thing, but it's always easier to see on the outside. But it's impressive that you saw it, because I think oftentimes people don't, even though we count ourselves amongst the wise, we still fall foul. And then just to wrap with what Peck said, there's nothing wrong with a beer and pretzels game from time to time. The real fun is the memorable roleplay moments where everyone is on their A game instead of constant comic relief. Yeah, and the other thing is you're bringing the comic relief, and then if someone else thinks they're bringing the comic relief, and then someone else thinks they're bringing the comic relief, you just end up with a whole mess of probably not actually that much funny stuff, and nothing's happening.
Right.
Well, we've hit the hour. Alyssa, any final thoughts? Is there anything I missed? I feel like every time I talk to you, there's something I forget to. It does go by fast, but I appreciate it, because now you squeeze this in there right between getting off of work and going to eat, whereas I've got to relax for like 3 hours after I'm finished before I had to hop on. So I'm appreciative of your time. Did we miss anything? Is there anything you want to mention before we get off?
We covered a lot of ground. Hopefully people have fun listening to us chat, but I know. I think we could pick this up again in a month's time and just continue the conversation.
Absolutely. Well, have a great rest of your evening, and we'll talk to you later. And let's see. Oh, I always throw your website out there. Is there anything else? You have any other links you want me to toss out there before we?
That's a good one. Yeah,
that's a good one.
My Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, they're all available on that site right there.
All right, folks. Thanks for. All right. Thanks, folks, for joining. I appreciate you. And I'll be doing my, just a quick programming note. Tomorrow I'll be back to doing my OSR Reddit roundup for the lunch hour stream. So that'll be 1 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. I like to go into the OSR Reddit group, and I just read through stuff and talk about it with the folks in chat. It's a lot of fun. All right, folks. Talk to you later. Peace out.